You know, a lot of people talk about things being made in America today and how important it is to support manufacturing here in the States. And it's very important. But made in America doesn't really mean anything unless there's a certain standard of excellence involved. A sense of pride in building the best product that you possibly can. You know, like they did back in the old days, like the 70s, the 1870s. Edwards Manufacturing opened their doors in 1875 and quickly became one of the premier manufacturers of agricultural and road grading equipment. Through the years, Edwards continued to move forward by developing a number of products that made people's lives easier. But the one product that was by far the most popular was the Ironworker. Since metal in all of its many forms is one of the main components that America was built on, being able to work it quickly and safely has been a big deal for a long time. But how does a company take a simple tool like an Ironworker and continue to refine it year after year and make it better and better all the time? Well, that is the real success story behind Edwards Manufacturing.
We listen a lot to our dealership and a lot to our consumers, and since we've been around for such a long time, we have a lot of customers out there who continually feed back very useful information. So we take all that information, we kind of mull it around into our kind of, creative pot, and then we figure out what really works, and we try to respond to the market in a way that continually adds value to what they're doing. We've got a bunch of great customers out there who just love the product, and they're really core builders. They really understand the product, so they're our most valuable asset, I think.
Of course, having a CEO with a background in architectural design is a huge plus. And that gives Doug Friend the ability to design and develop new tools that are relevant for today's market. Once the initial design work is done, it goes to Gary.
We now have a chrome hinge here and a chrome hinge up here, so we're going to need to model that.
Where he puts together a program that lays out the parts and components needed to build it. Then it moves to Tony, where he further refines it for the production process. Huge slabs of metal are machined, laser cut and formed to create what will become the chassis of an Ironworker. At this point, the building of the machine begins. And it's not just slapped together by some robotic assembly line. No. Real flesh and blood craftsmen build each machine from the ground up. I don't know what they use that for, but I want one. That's awesome, man. The main pieces are assembled together and welded. And all the mechanical parts are installed. Then the hydraulics and electrical systems go on. Finally, the machine goes to final assembly, where it receives the shrouding and extras that go with that particular model of Ironworker. The last step is the paint booth, where everything is painted, and then the machine is finished out and tested to make sure everything is right and ready to go when it gets delivered to your shop or garage.
I've seen guys that have bought in the early 80s to the early 90s and have turned their machine around for the same price they paid for it back then.
But Edwards Manufacturing isn't just about the past. They also understand the importance of planning for the future. So they are actively involved with the local high school to help young people learn about tools and how to use them.
And that's a huge donation because of the simple fact school budgets are so tight as it is now. There's no way we could go out. If I put that in for my budget, basically nothing would ever happen. We'd never be able to buy something like that. So when an industry comes in and donates something like that to you, you're very thankful that they do that, because it gives you an opportunity to teach kids on a piece of equipment that's out there used in industry right now.
So, is that it for Edwards Manufacturing? They just gonna build Ironworkers forever? Well, probably. But you can be sure that that's not all they're gonna build. They plan on continuing to move forward and building new stuff all the time. But no matter what they do, you can be sure of one thing. It'll definitely bear the sign, Made in America.
Tool Tech. Brought to you by Cornwell Tools, the choice of professionals.
Without a doubt, some of the best tools out there are ones that combine multiple uses into a small package. And the Swiss Army knife is pretty much the one that invented that idea. We all wanted one just like this big, with the knife, the spoon, the fork, and all the other gadgets on it. But if this is a good idea for a small handheld tool, wouldn't it also work for a large shop tool? Well, that's exactly what Edwards Manufacturing thought when they came out with the Ironworker. A tool like this will allow you to cut sheet metal, angle iron, metal plate. You can punch holes, you can cut notches, and do all kinds of other things that can really come in handy when you're fabricating parts. But as we've shown you before, instead of just stopping here, Edwards decided to take the idea of the multi-tool even further and create a tubing bender that uses the Ironworker as the power source to operate the bender by just plugging in a couple of lines. This keeps the price of the bender down so you can afford to have both tools. Now, that approach was so successful that Edwards decided to create a press that also used the Ironworker as its power source. Which means that in a few quick seconds, you can have a 40-ton hydraulic press at your disposal with a fully adjustable ram and table and different heads to fit your needs. On top of that, the heavy-duty brake will allow you to bend steel plate up to 3/8 inch thick. And because the power comes from the Ironworker, the cost of this press is about half of what a standalone unit would be. Now, everybody knows that having the proper tools will make or break your ability to finish a project. And cost is usually the #1 reason that you don't have the tools that you want. Well, now Edwards has made it possible for you to have 3 of the main fabrication tools that you need at a price that was unheard of just a few years ago because they all use the same power source. This really is the ultimate heavy-duty multi-tool. And it kind of makes you wonder, what are they going to add to this next? If you work a lot with metal, I'm sure there's a lot of tools that you'd like to have. But there is one tool that you should have, an Ironworker. Because it allows you to punch, cut, and notch metal in just a few seconds. And this is one area where it's important to buy a quality tool.
The offshore stuff is just cheaper built. It may wear out in one day, it may wear out in 1 week. The thing with our stuff, it's very heavy duty. It's going to last you a lot of years.
Based on that fact, it was a natural step for Edwards Manufacturing to come out with their hydraulic accessory pack that allows you to run a tubing bender and a press off of the same Ironworker. But that doesn't mean that they've stopped developing their Ironworker and trying to make it better. For example, this is the new Elite Series 110, and the first thing that grabs you about this machine is the way it looks. I mean, it's got this cool Art Deco kind of vibe to it. But an Ironworker is not judged by the way it looks. It's judged by performance. And this thing has got a lot of features. Check it out. An integrated hydraulic hold down keeps your metal in place when you're cutting it, whether it's flat or angled. And internal LED lighting will make sure that you have a clear view of what's going on inside the machine. You have a digital measuring system to make sure your pieces are all cut to the proper length. And a notcher and punch areas to round out the versatility of the machine. For power, the 10 horsepower motor and 110-ton capacity will handle pretty much anything you can throw at it with no problem, even heavy steel like this truck frame. But if something like the 110 is too big for you or out of your price range, well, Edwards has smaller iron workers and equipment that will fit your shop and your budget. And if you ever go to get rid of some of this stuff, you're not going to have any problem there either.
I've seen guys that have bought in the early 80s to the early 90s and have turned their machine around for the same price they paid for it back then.
And that makes this not only a great tool to have, but also a wise investment. Everybody knows that if you're going to work with metal, you have got to have the right tools to make it happen. And nothing works metal like an iron worker from Edwards Manufacturing. Now, this is a 40-ton unit. It's perfect for a small shop because it gives you enough power to cut flat stock, punch holes, cut angle iron, and even notch tubing. But the really big news here is in the 10-ton tubing bender that you can get to go with it. Check it out. The bender is easy to load or unload, and it'll operate in either a horizontal or a vertical position. The unique design in the 10-ton ram allow you to easily make bends up to 180 degrees in tubing. Different dies are available up to 2.5 inches, and the whole thing is easily portable with a rolling stand so you can move it anywhere. Yeah, look at that. Now, of course, you can get this tubing bender with its own power source, but the really slick deal is the quick disconnect that allows you to pull the power from the iron worker. That, of course, cuts the cost of the tubing bender in half. So if you do a lot of heavy metal fabrication, working with tubing, building chassis, or you've got limited space in your shop, Edwards Manufacturing has got the tools that you need to have.